You've been moved to non-essential. Access revoked. That's all he said. No explanation, no eye contact. Just clicked the damn button like he was ordering a side of ranch. 1 second I'm logged into the architecture I built from scratch. Hell, before half these idiots even worked here. And the next, my screen goes gray. Session terminated. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't pound. I just stared at the blinking cursor, like it might blink twice if this was a sick joke. Then he had the gall to smirk. That soft, condescending tech bro smirk that says I've read half a Scrum manual and now I'm God. This data's for essential staff only, he said, tapping his badge against the door like a toddler playing security guard. Nothing personal. Nothing personal? He just erased 15 years of infrastructure planning, layered fail-safes, and hand-coded backups with 1 sentence. And I was supposed to smile and take it like a girl getting dumped before prom. I nodded like a robot. Lips curled into a tight half-smile. Of course. Wouldn't want to slow down all that innovation. He didn't catch the sarcasm. Or maybe he did and thought I was just being emotional. That's the word they use when women don't shrink. By the way, if you're listening to this and haven't subscribed yet, now's your chance. 97% of people never hit that button, and it really motivates the team. A like helps too, especially on stories like this, where every twist actually happened. Now I didn't scream. I didn't march to HR. I didn't throw my coffee at the server rack, tempting as that was. I just stood up, walked past the junior devs, who avoided eye contact like I was contagious, and left the room with every ounce of composure I had left. But inside I was already cataloging the 1,000 ways this was going to implode. Because here's the fun part they didn't consider. They'd built everything on top of the skeleton I gave them. My naming conventions. My routing logic. My firewalls. The core dependencies still pinged my logins. They didn't strip me out. They just painted over the surface and called it theirs. The new lead, Jeremy, had been bragging all week about streamlining the legacy junk. Legacy junk being, apparently, the encryption logic keeping their API from exploding. The worst part? I'd trained him. Gave that man 3 weeks of my life, walking him through things he clearly didn't understand. He took notes in Comic Sans. I should have known then. But whatever. I'd already started saving clean versions of my logs. Access history, credentials, flagged anomalies, quietly downloaded to a private drive. Not sabotage. Just insurance. You ever watch a house built on rotten wood? From a distance it looks fine. People walk in, toast champagne, take selfies on the stairs. And then one day, a soft breeze hits just right, and the whole thing gives out with a beautiful, perfect crash. I didn't want revenge. I wanted gravity to do its job. And it would. Very, very soon. 2 days later, I walked past conference room C and caught a glimpse of what they now called the Essential Team. It was like watching a college group project led by a bunch of interns who just discovered ChatGPT and thought it made them software architects. Jeremy had rolled up his sleeves, because of course he had, and was sketching boxes and arrows on a whiteboard like he was building NASA's next launch system. Phase out the redundancy layers, he said confidently, using words he didn't understand. We can cut latency by ignoring the secondary authentication stack. It's deadweight. Deadweight. That deadweight was the reason our servers hadn't gone dark during the DDoS incident last year. That stack rerouted traffic through an internal loop I built after noticing a pattern in failed login pings. Something they never even documented, just watched me solve in real time while sipping their free kombucha. I stood there a moment, unseen, behind the barely open door, watching their confidence grow like mold on bread. They were moving fast, sure, but in the wrong direction. Mila, the UI dev who once asked if backend meant we had to touch actual wires, was nodding along like she understood Jeremy's plan. She clapped when he erased a section labeled Legacy Logic. Legacy Logic being the cryptographic token handler I'd written during a weekend in 2017 when the company almost lost half its clients to a security breach. I could hear the echo of my own past warnings in their meeting, except now, twisted into excuses for deletion. They didn't know what they were deleting. Not really. They just wanted it gone because it wasn't theirs. Every time I saw them brag about refactoring, I knew it was code for breaking stuff they didn't recognize. stripping comments out of scripts like they were clutter, not realizing those lines held the sequence logic that prevented race conditions in production. It would have been funny if it wasn't so inevitable. The best part? They kept tagging my old notes in the repo with things like, needs cleanup or deprecated. Never once pausing to ask why something was there. Because asking meant acknowledging they didn't know. And ego doesn't make room for questions. Jeremy walked out of the room later that day, holding a sandwich he didn't pay for, bragging on a call about cutting the fat. Said the system was finally light and lean. Yeah. Like a bridge right after you tear out the support beams because they didn't match the new paint. I could have said something. Could have warned them. But what would that make me? A desperate ex trying to get back into the group chat? No thanks. They wanted to believe they were visionaries. Let them. Visionaries crash harder when reality kicks in. All I had to do was wait. And the waiting was almost over. The email subject line was practically vibrating with self-importance. Investor Showcase, Q3 Vision and Velocity, sent from the CEO's executive assistant with 3 exclamation points and a pixelated gif of a rocket. I clicked it anyway, even though I knew better. Curiosity's a nasty little itch. Inside was a glowing invite to an internal celebration of innovation, hyping the upcoming live demo as the most exciting tech moment of the quarter. I wasn't on the invite list. I only found out about it because Brenda from finance asked if I'd be doing the walkthrough again. You always explain it better than Jeremy, she said, sipping her terrible vending machine latte. When I told her I wasn't involved this time, she blinked, confused. But you built the thing. Yeah, I did. 12 years ago, I started stitching this system together from scraps. Back when our backend was 3 servers, a hope, and duct tape. I designed the scaffolding that held every damn feature together. I wrote the internal failsafes, the dependency checker, the sandbox logic. I watched version after version pile on top of my code like paint over old wood, and now they were gonna parade it on stage like it was their newborn child. Jeremy walked by as I was closing the email, grinning like he just learned what a variable was. Gonna be huge, he said. We even got Martinez from Horizon Capital flying in. I nodded like it didn't matter. Like I hadn't just swallowed a cocktail of betrayal, pride, and nausea. Hope you have backups. He laughed. Oh, we've streamlined all that. No more paranoid redundancies slowing us down. Paranoid redundancies. That's what they called the fallback systems I'd bled for. The automated error rollback Jeremy never understood. The custom triggers tied to high-risk functions. All gone, probably replaced with some copy-paste solution from a Medium article. A week out from the demo, the office turned into a circus. They brought in snacks, balloons, even branded lanyards like this was CES. Every meeting room had some buzzword scrawled on its door: velocity, disruption, agility. You could feel the pretense thick in the air, like Axe body spray and bad metaphors. I walked past one of the prep rooms and caught a glimpse of the new dashboard. It looked slick, flat UI, bright buttons, no clue what was under the hood. The investor preview deck sat on the table next to Jeremy's laptop. I didn't touch it, just glanced at the title. Revolutionizing Legacy Systems Through Lean Synergy. That legacy system they were revolutionizing? That was me. Every line of code. Every patch I'd made at 2 a.m. after a server crash. Every emergency hotfix that saved their asses during live client updates. And now it was being pitched as Jeremy's vision of the future. While I sat outside the room, sipping burnt coffee from a chipped mug labeled non-essential. I thought about speaking up, tapping Martinez on the shoulder the moment he walked in, and asking if he wanted to see the real data behind the demo. But no, there was a better way to expose them. A cleaner way. Because I'd built the bones of this beast. And they were about to try dancing on its grave that I stayed late that Friday. Not because anyone asked, not because I owed them a damn thing, but because when someone slaps you across the face and calls it a handshake, the least you can do is keep the receipts. The office was nearly empty, just the soft hum of overworked HVAC and the occasional flicker of the motion sensor lights. My badge still got me into the secondary lab. Funny how the new streamlined access list missed that little detail. I didn't log in through the front door. I went through a shell script I'd written years ago, back when the network had more holes than a colander, and I was the only one who cared enough to patch them. Still worked. Like riding a bike. If the bike was a war rig wired with explosives and no brakes. I pulled up the system monitor and stared. Really stared. The data wasn't just familiar. It talked to me. Like an old dog that still perks up when it hears your boots hit the porch. There it was, the heartbeat tracker pinging my fallback logic. The middleware still calling my escalation triggers. My name buried in API call comments, in the architecture notes, in the version history nobody bothered to scrub. Jeremy's team had painted the walls. But the wiring? That was mine. They'd disabled my main credentials, sure. But they didn't change the root logic pointing to the very scripts I'd built. Critical failover protocols still referenced /archive/Simone_fallback. No one renamed the handler. No one looked. Too busy reinventing wheels and calling them hoverboards. I copied everything quietly. No footprints. Config logs, access trails, dependencies, script history. Not sabotage. Just preservation. I zipped it all into a dead drop folder encrypted with a salted key that only I could generate. Ironically, they were still using my encryption layer to protect the files. I chuckled under my breath when the archive locked itself using the same handler Jeremy had called over-engineered nonsense 2 weeks ago. I sat back in the chair and looked around the lab. Same fake ficus in the corner. Same water stain on the ceiling that no one ever fixed. A decade of solving other people's emergencies. And this was how it ended. Quietly under fluorescent lights, saving the evidence they didn't know they'd need until it was too late. There was no joy in it. No firework of vengeance. Just a kind of bone-deep stillness. Like the feeling you get watching clouds roll in before a thunderstorm. You know it's coming. You don't run. You don't yell. You just wait. I emailed myself one last internal log. An unassuming file named heartbeat_check.txt. It contained a single timestamp and a line of code showing the system still reaching for my script. Like a ghost touching a locked door. They thought they'd written me out. But ghosts don't need keycards. And when this thing fell apart, because it would fall apart, it wouldn't be with a whisper. It would be with a crash so loud. The only thing louder would be the silence that followed when they realized who'd been keeping the lights on all along. By the morning of the demo, the office looked like a damn wedding reception. White linens over the break room tables. A fruit tray no one was gonna touch. Tech-branded cupcakes lined up like sugary little lies, each topped with edible fondant logos that peeled off like the company's morals. Leadership strutted through the halls like peacocks in Patagonia vests. Martinez from Horizon Capital had arrived an hour early, his assistant trailing him with 2 phones, a tablet, and a folder thick enough to kill a rat. Jeremy met him at the elevator with both hands extended like he was greeting royalty. You'd think he built the damn pyramids instead of just whitewashing someone else's blueprint. I took my seat in the 3rd row. Not in the front, not in the back. Just there. Like furniture. No name tag. No reserved placard. Just a spare folding chair next to the interns, who were whispering about how revolutionary the new dashboard was. One of them mentioned the redesign like it was a religious experience. Another giggled about how the CEO called it the future of operational clarity. I nearly choked on my complimentary granola bar. They dimmed the lights and cued the intro music, some bloated cinematic swell that sounded like it was pulled from a royalty-free Avengers knockoff. Screens lit up. The logo animated on cue. Polite applause. Jeremy stepped on stage with his clicker in hand and his ego inflated to the size of his job title. This is more than just an update, he said. This is a declaration. That legacy thinking is done. That we've reimagined every layer of our infrastructure for the next generation of performance. My jaw tightened. Every layer? Buddy, you couldn't rewire a smart toaster without Googling it twice. I caught Martinez nodding. He didn't know what any of it meant, but he liked the buzzwords. Elastic scalability, modular dependency chains, predictive autonomy. Jeremy slung them like darts, hoping one would land in the investor's wallet. He demoed the dashboard. Everything looked clean. Smooth animations, responsive toggles, cute little charts with tooltips. Nothing real under the hood, but slick enough to fool someone who's never read a line of code in their life. From where I sat, I could see one of the engineers in the wing, Sam, nervously chewing his thumbnail. He knew. Not everything, but enough. The rest of the essential team looked like kids about to present a group project they didn't do. All matching polos, all pretending they understood what was about to happen. The irony buzzed around me like static. I could feel it tightening, coiling, ready to snap. Because I knew what the next screen relied on. I knew what script it would try to call when Jeremy clicked, generate live report. And I knew what that script still pointed to. Me. My drive. My logic. My name. The silence before it happened felt almost sacred. Everyone in the room was holding their breath. The interns were starstruck. The board members were smiling. Jeremy raised the clicker like a magician about to pull a dove from his laptop. And I sat there, completely ignored. Still. Unbothered. Eyes on the screen. They didn't see it yet. But they would. And when they did, it wouldn't be gentle. The lights dimmed another notch as Jeremy took a slow, theatrical breath. Now, he said, voice honeyed with rehearsed confidence. Let's take a look at what real-time efficiency looks like. Click. The main screen lit up like a sunrise. Crisp UI. Soft animations. The company logo eased into the corner like it had just slid into a premium parking spot. A clean interface populated on a faux dashboard. Revenue models, client retention arcs, uptime reports. All simulated in a way that made even the janitor feel like a stakeholder. The room clapped. Cameras clicked. Martinez nodded again, deeper this time. The kind of nod that says, yeah, this looks like the kind of thing I can throw $20 million at and still sleep at night. Jeremy caught the nod and smiled like he'd just been knighted. Now let's generate the live report, Jeremy said. He stepped aside slightly, giving the screen more stage than himself. Click. At first, nothing. Just a slight pause, like the system was thinking. Processing. As it should. Then the blue spinner appeared. Standard. Harmless. Expected. It spun once. Twice. Hung. And then. Fatal error. Core script missing. A black box flashed across the top of the screen in blinking red. The spinner froze. Then disappeared. Configuration failure. Invalid endpoint. /archive/Simone_fallback not found. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just sat there in the third row as the room's pulse flatlined. Like someone had yanked the oxygen out mid-sentence. Jeremy's face twitched. One of the board members leaned forward, squinting. A few heads turned toward the engineering table. Sam dropped his pen. You could hear it clatter. The error message stayed on screen, bold and screaming. It looked enormous on the projector, like God himself had printed it across the clouds in red ink. 2 more lines appeared. Automated error logs trying and failing to reroute. Fallback logic disabled. External triggers unreachable. Whispers started. First in the back. Then moving forward like a ripple through broken glass. What's fallback mean? Is this part of the demo? I thought this was supposed to be live. Jeremy fumbled with the clicker like it was suddenly radioactive. One moment, he muttered, clearly hoping the next click would magic away the truth. Click. Nothing. Same error. Then the screen glitched. The entire dashboard flickered like a dying light bulb. CTO stood up, face already draining of color. You could see the vein in his neck throbbing. Martinez's assistant began typing something on her phone fast. Jeremy's smile had completely evaporated, replaced with the kind of half-grin you wear when the roller coaster lurches to a stop mid-loop. And I sat still. The chair beneath me didn't creak. My hands stayed folded in my lap. Because I knew this moment would come. I didn't force it. I didn't break a single line of code. All I did was stop holding the net beneath them. And now, they were falling live in front of their investors, their board, and the audience they so desperately wanted to impress. The illusion had cracked. And the freefall had only just begun. Jeremy had stopped talking entirely. Mouth slightly open. Hands still gripping the clicker like a toddler clinging to a toy he no longer knew how to use. The screen behind him looped through the same 3 blinking lines of failure. Over and over, like a chant. The CTO was the first to move. He sprang up from his chair like he'd been shocked, nearly knocking over his tablet as he beelined toward the tech wing of the stage. He leaned into the row of engineers, voice low and desperate. Can you override it? Just bypass the handler. Hard reset if you have to. Sam looked like he was going to be sick. We can't. It's pointing to a fallback script that doesn't exist anymore. Or it does, but he stopped himself. Didn't want to say it. Too late. The panic had started. Another engineer, Dennis, began typing furiously into the terminal console, sweat forming across his forehead. Trying hard patch, he whispered. Injecting mock endpoint. The screen hiccuped. Everyone froze. Then, new error, unauthorized call stack. A fresh line of red text exploded across the dashboard. Permissions invalid. System integrity compromised. Gasps from the audience this time. One of the VPs, probably legal, was now on the phone, speaking in low tones with the cadence of someone delivering an obituary. Martinez wasn't even pretending to be polite anymore. He sat motionless, arms folded, ice cold. His assistant stopped typing and simply stared at the CTO like she was watching a child light a match in a fireworks warehouse. And still they clicked. Still they typed. The essential team, Jeremy included, hunched around a single laptop like villagers around a campfire, throwing code at it, hoping one of them had the magic spell to undo months of careless arrogance. But there was no magic. Because they hadn't just deleted the fallback, they'd deleted the fallback's fallback. They'd gutted the very infrastructure that held the house together, and then slapped up drywall and prayed no one noticed. Until now. Until everyone noticed. I sat perfectly still in my seat, legs crossed, hands calm. A few rows ahead, a marketing director turned around, eyes flicking over me like she was trying to place my face. Like some corner of her brain still remembered that I used to be in those meetings. That I used to run those screens. That this was mine. A slow, creeping warmth spread through my chest, not joy, not revenge. Just dark, quiet satisfaction. The kind that comes from watching gravity do its job after being ignored for so long. The CTO barked something into a headset. Jeremy started pacing. A junior developer tripped over a cable, trying to plug in a backup drive that wouldn't matter. Every attempt made it worse. Every frantic fix exposed another piece of the lie. And me? I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because right now, the system was doing all the talking for me. Backstage, the projector beamed the raw logs across a sidewall screen, intended only for internal reference, but now accidentally front and center for half the front row. Terminal lines scrolled by like a confession unraveling in real time. Black background, white text, red alerts peppered throughout like bullet wounds. The CTO hunched close to the feed, lips moving silently as he read faster and faster, looking for any line of code that would tell him this wasn't his fault. That someone, anyone, else had flipped the wrong switch. Then he stopped. Froze. A single line blinked, bright and damning in the darkened tech panel. Error. Missing handler /Simone_fallback/init_sequence.json. Last known reference. Simone.t, owner access revoked. For a beat, no one breathed. The CTO's head tilted slightly, like he couldn't believe what he was reading, like he thought maybe he was hallucinating. Then his mouth dropped open. Simone, he whispered. He said it like a curse. He turned to Jeremy, who'd gone bone white. You said it was deprecated. Jeremy shook his head, stammering. I thought we cleaned all that. You said we streamlined. You deleted the root dependency, the CTO barked. You removed the one failsafe in the whole damn structure. I could feel every eye starting to shift, slowly like a tide. Even the interns turned in their seats. One of the board members adjusted his glasses and looked straight down my row. I didn't stand, didn't speak. I just pulled out my phone, turned the screen toward them, let the glow illuminate the terminal log I'd been watching the whole time. Same error, same path, same name. Meanie. A few gasps. One sharp intake of breath from Martinez himself. The kind of sound a man makes when the illusion finally cracks, and he realizes the magician's hands were never on stage. Jeremy blinked at me like I'd come back from the dead. His face twisted, not in anger, not even shame, just stunned recognition. Like he'd been driving with blinders on and finally saw the truck he'd veered into. I didn't smile, didn't nod, just held the screen up, perfectly still, long enough for everyone to see it, long enough for it to land.
Simone Pointé.
The name tied to the system's last lifeline. The name they revoked. The name they erased from the credits and called non-essential. Now pulsing in red across every system error like a heartbeat screaming you needed her. And in that moment, the entire room understood. Who built the system? Who kept it alive? And who they had thrown away. The CTO staggered back from the projector like the screen had punched him in the chest. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. No words, just raw panic. The mic in his hand slipped, caught on his blazer, and clattered to the floor with a crack that echoed louder than any of Jeremy's buzzwords ever had. Martinez stood. Not fast, not dramatic, just a slow, deliberate rise that said this meeting is over. His assistant already had her phone to her ear, speaking in hushed tones that probably began with terminate and ended with due diligence. What the hell am I looking at? One investor barked. Another stood up, pointing at the screen. Is that a real production error? This wasn't staged. This is fraud, someone hissed. You can't run a live demo on ghosted dependencies and hope no one notices. The CTO turned to Jeremy, wild-eyed, sweating. Fix it. Roll it back. I don't care what you have to do. Jeremy shook his head, visibly trembling. We can't. The fallback's gone. He paused, catching himself before he said my name again, but it was too late. Everyone already knew. The investors weren't just angry, they were furious. Some were already packing up. Others were shouting questions that had no answers. Who approved this? Who deleted core failsafes? Why was the only person who could have prevented this sitting in the audience? The CEO hadn't said a word. He looked like he'd swallowed glass. No blazer, no bravado, just a man realizing he'd thrown his safety net into the fire and told everyone the building was fireproof. I stood. Quietly. No dramatics. No last words or gotcha moment. Just picked up my bag and started down the aisle while the screen behind me continued to bleed errors like a severed artery. A few heads turned as I passed, but no one stopped me. What would they say? Sorry, we didn't know. Of course they didn't. They never wanted to. As I neared the exit, I passed Brenda from finance. She looked up at me, eyes wide with something between awe and guilt. Did you know this would happen? She whispered. I paused just long enough to answer. I knew the system. They didn't. And then I walked out. Down the corridor. Past the catering table with untouched cupcakes. Past the banner that read Q3 Vision and Velocity. Past the glass doors and into the afternoon sun, where the world still turned, oblivious to the implosion behind me. I didn't need applause. I didn't want revenge. The system had spoken loud enough. Turns out I wasn't essential until everything depended on me.